Hey everyone, welcome to We the Trust. On this podcast, we talk about the issues that plague the lives of men, from sonship to fatherhood, fitness to finance, emotions to spiritual formation. We push the boundaries that make most men uncomfortable. My name is Mario Casada, a pastor, mindset coach, and brand strategist living in Honolulu, Hawaii, and I am joined by Eric Chang, an entrepreneur, fitness coach, and author living in Arcadia, California. Welcome to Season 2. This is Roger. He is coming to We the Trust all the way from Indonesia, and he's a social entrepreneur. He has known Eric for a little bit of time. And so they're friends back from California, where Roger was a pastor for a while. And now he's living in Indonesia doing some really cool entrepreneur stuff. And we're going to be talking about being a leader today. So, hey, Roger, welcome. And why don't you give us a little bit of background on yourself and a little bit of your story?
Welcome. Selamat. Selamat. Is that how you say it?
Selamat. Sure. You say it's Selamat Malam right now because it's 1:30 a.m. But
here we go.
Yeah, it's an honor to be with you guys. I listen to the podcast, so it's fun to be on here.
Of our seven listeners. Yes.
Yeah. I grew up in Atlanta, born and raised there. Moved over to California for seminary, lived there for about 9 years. And then recently, maybe 2.5 years ago, moved over to Indonesia. I'm married to Jesse. We are, I think, celebrating 17 years this year.
Oh,
we've got 4 kids, and we are living it up in Indonesia.
All right, 1 second. That was a terrible screen grab, Eric. So everybody look at the camera. Everybody look at the camera, smile. All right, cool. I'll send you that. 17, Roger, seriously, like, how old are you?
I'm 41.
Whoa, so 17 years, you're 41. Man, that's rad. Okay, I didn't know you were so close to my age. I'm really old, but not 41. I wish I was 41. Anyway, so 4 kids in Indonesia, and you just pulled everybody into Indonesia and you say, hey, we're going to live there. We're going to do this.
My wife and I for a while had actually been praying about moving abroad. There's just something about, for us, a pull to serve God in places where people don't know about God or about Jesus. And we happen to live in an area that has one of the largest unreached people groups in the world. There's 40 million people in this area. And so we prayed for a long time. Then about, 4 years ago now, we came on a trip to Indonesia with our church, and just saw crazy miracles happening. We had the time of our lives here, and we prayed at the end of that summer and said, God, is this the place that you're moving us to, that you're calling us to? My kids included in that prayer time, and just everyone heard yes. So we moved out here. And the crazy thing is, when our church talked about wanting to do a project in Indonesia, I said, heck no, I don't want to go to that place. It's so hot. And the thing is, as soon as I said it, I kind of heard God say, like, why are you saying no already? You haven't heard what this is going to be about. And so it turns out that actually both of my parents are from Indonesia. Both of my parents were born and raised here. They immigrated to America right before having me. And so being in Indonesia now is a little bit of a homecoming, or like kind of reconnecting with my roots. And it's just funny. It's only a story that God could write.
So we're going to be talking about being a leader today. And I love the idea that you included your family, when I mean your family, I don't necessarily mean just your wife, but I mean your children in praying about leaving everything that they know and moving to a completely different country, right?
Yeah.
And they prayed about it and they were with you on it. And I think that's pretty radical. I just recently heard about, I was listening to something that Jeff Bethke put out, and he talks about integration in our families and integrating them into the call that God has in our lives, not separating them, not segregating them. He talks about like how Billy Graham was just like so focused on the call that God had put on his life, but he separated himself from his family and left them to deal with their stuff and went and answered the call by himself. And he talks about like how that he doesn't see that necessarily in the scripture. Everything's integrated. The family is integrated. Abram brought his family and his people on the journey and the call with God, and they kind of answered the call together. But I love the sense that you were sensitive to your children enough to integrate them into that decision making. How old were they at that point?
At that point, my oldest was maybe 10 or 11.
Okay.
And my youngest was, I don't know, 1 or 2. Really young.
Wow. Man, you moved a toddler to Indonesia. It's crazy. You are nuts.
We've always felt like this call that we have to serve God is a family call. So, in various points of my career, maybe I'm the person with the pastor title or whatnot, but it's always been kind of woven into just the fabric of our family life. Of when I was the college pastor in LA at the church Eric attends, we just left our door unlocked. College students would walk in and out. We had students living with us at different parts of the year. And the number of students living with us kind of depended on the time of the year. And so our kids just grew around it. And part of that experience of kind of being in our college ministry was going abroad every summer to a different place and serving. And our kids just always came along with us because we can't leave them behind. So, when it was time to permanently move, we wanted to make sure our kids were included in that decision and included in kind of hearing God.
One thing I'm just curious about, like when we talk about leadership, what's the definition of leadership for you?
For me, I would say that it's having vision or a conviction for something that either doesn't exist yet or isn't the way it should be, and then the ability to see it through. So it could be maybe an example from the Old Testament would be like Nehemiah, right? He sees the walls of Jerusalem just kind of completely destroyed, and God puts it on his heart to rebuild it. And so he's kind of the one that oversees kind of the reconstruction of that all. But it doesn't have to be that big. It can be as little as like leading yourself, seeing maybe in a fitness perspective, like I'm not where I want to be with my fitness. And then leading yourself to build those habits and get exercising and things like that, and kind of seeing it through into a new lifestyle. So
really, like, personal responsibility is like huge, right? For a leader, ownership of situations, ownership of the issue, ownership of direction for not only their own life, right? Speaking as a leader and just like kind of separate it out, but also for the lives of those he leads, right? And primarily for us as men, it's like our families, right? So I love the idea that ownership is huge in that, right? Where do you feel like
Mhm.
you've been challenged with that since moving to a completely different country?
Yeah. So I just read the biography of Will Smith, and he tells the story of when he and his brother were like little kids. His dad, growing up, his dad owned like a AC repair business or a refrigeration business. And so just kind of like seemingly out of nowhere, his dad makes them build like a 20-foot brick wall just from scratch. So he tells the story of like, basically it takes them an entire year. And, one day they're kind of laying bricks in the cold, and Will is just like complaining the whole time, like, we are never going to finish this wall. And so finally, their dad, he just has it with their complaining. He's like, hey, your job is not to finish this wall. It's to lay one brick, and then it's to lay one more brick, and then it's to lay one more brick. Because if you just think about the wall, it's too big of a task. But if you can think about laying one brick at a time, um, then that's kind of puts it into something that you can do. So they end up finishing the wall, but what it does for the kids, right? So it's the dad that has the vision for the wall, but he has to teach his kids, like, hey, these are important habits to build, like hard work, consistency. And I mean, to teach kids something to do something every day for a year and be good at it is like really, really tough.
Yeah.
But like that story sticks with Will and really is kind of one of the drivers for why he's so hardworking and why he's able to be so consistent in his effort of excellence.
So with being, let me back up. Hold on.
Yeah.
Since landing in Indonesia, what do
Yeah.
you feel have been your biggest challenges and your biggest successes?
Yeah. I mean, our biggest challenges, we've had health things. So, we've all been hit with COVID. My wife's been hit multiple times with it by now. Um, like adapting in a new culture. When I first moved here, I didn't have language. There's like so much misunderstanding, and it's hard to love people well when you like don't understand their culture. And then it's really been costly for our kids, my oldest one especially. There's been weekends where we ask him how he's doing, and he just weeps because he really misses home. He's in high school now; he's a freshman, and yeah, I guess I'll share a little bit more about my oldest son. He got Instagram recently. He's in high school now, and we thought it was a way for him to connect with his friends back home. And so this past fall, right, he's seeing all his friends like going to football games. He showed me a picture of his friends one time at homecoming, and he's like, "Dad, what's homecoming?" And I had to explain it to him. And he's seeing like what he's missing in the US, and he's thinking like, I'm really missing out on life. And I told him like, look, man, I guarantee you, if you flip Instagrams and you show your friends what you're doing in Indonesia, I guarantee you they think what you're doing is so much cooler. And one of the ways that I feel like I've had to talk to him is, hey, like you've had to give these things up and you're really sad, but I'm kind of the belief that God never downgrades us. So if he called you here, and remember, you prayed about this and God told you yes too. So if God called you here, for sure he didn't downgrade you, or for sure he didn't call you to a worse life. I always feel like God calls us to a better life.
Yeah.
And so you need to work out with God, like, okay, what is the exchange here? Okay, I've given up homecoming and football games. What is it that being here is supposed to make it worth it for what I've traded in?
Yeah.
And he's having to struggle with that and work through that. But
That's
I
really
feel like
powerful, man. Man, he's 13,
he's 14.
14, right? Oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. I remember when this was happening and you were telling me about this, and I was thinking like, man, like I was feeling so bummed for him, you know? And you hadn't shared this conversation that you had yet until right now. And it really does make me think about, I mean, what you're teaching him and what you're leading him into in this season is kind of like contentment, right? And it's like what you just spoke on was essentially what everyone goes through. You know, it's funny. Like I visited Mario last year, and ever since I've met them, I literally had this thing in the back of my mind, like, man, they get to live in Hawaii, like it's so cool, right? And it's like not that it isn't, but it's like I remember the very last time I went and visited, we were hiking, and then Mario points out this like the wealthiest. It was like this wealthiest triangle in Oahu. Remember that, Mario? What was it called again?
Wealthiest what in Oahu?
It was like the wealthiest little triangle in Oahu. It was like you said this little section is like
Kahala.
every house is like was it
Kahala?
No, something else. I remember I wrote about it. Like I blogged, like I wrote a little journal entry. Something else.
Lanikai?
It was.
it
We could see it
on
from
the
the top
same?
of Coco. You could see it on top of Coco Head. It was like right under Diamond Head.
Yeah. So that's right on the Diamond Head. That's Portlock.
Portland. That's right. Yeah, that's right. So I mean, you're like telling me about it, and I was like, man, I just think about living here and like living in that area, and then being in Oahu, and how you have access to like all of the island, and you're still within like drive of like food and really good tourism like related stuff. And I was just thinking about it, I was like, I paused for a moment and I thought, like, that's not the life I want, you know? But you think it's the life that you want when you're not there. And you hike to the very top, and you're like, you start to reevaluate everything. Cause I don't know, maybe it's like like you see the grass, and it's like, it is green, but it's not necessarily greener, you know? And that's hard. That's hard, especially, you know, at his age. It's like the FOMO is the realist, but I don't know that it changes so much. Even as I know, this is a great lesson for adults too. As we go through different seasons, you want different things. You are part of, you know, different social groups where you feel like people are doing different things, and you feel like you're missing out if you're not doing the same thing. And it just reminds me of like alignment into what your purpose is, and when you don't know what it is, everything is shiny, everything is attractive, and it's hard not to get stuck, you know? So good job leading him through that. That's a great conversation. I mean, I don't think at 14 years old, I had any kind of conversation with any adult about anything like that in my life. So that's powerful.
Me neither. Man.
Yeah.
What is with that whole idea, right, for him? What are some things that he's doing or you're leading him through, even with the Instagram thing, right? Like, what are some things that you're helping develop in him or reveal to him that, you know, what his life is consisting of right now actually isn't as much FOMO as it is, you know, being overflowed, right, through the Spirit.
Right. Yeah. Because I think what's at the heart of his struggle right now is loneliness, or the need for companionship.
Yeah.
Right? And I think what I want to lead him through is, you know, because I've talked to him too about like, hey, in different seasons of life, you actually have friends come and go, and you come and go too, right? Even if he were to stay in LA at the end of high school, he would probably go to college, and maybe one or two friends max would happen to go to the same college as him. But there's always going to be, and like, even for me as his father, like I lost my father at 17. So I can't even promise that I'll be around for his whole life, right? Or his mom. What I want him to learn is that there's always going to be someone, his name is Jesus, that will always be with you, right? That's his promise in Matthew 28. And what you need, what your heart really needs, you can only find in him. And so when he feels these big feelings and when he feels like there's lack, how I want him to respond is to ask God to provide it for him. And I mean, practically speaking, he needs friends. So we've also done things like put him in basketball things. And we're trying to give him positive experiences in Indonesia too. So, next week is their spring break. I'm taking him diving along with his little brother. And so I want him to know I'm there for him and that we can talk about anything. But yeah, more than anything, I want him to be able to go to God and get what he needs there.
Do you feel like because of the way that you guys have chosen to live, do you think that it changes the way that you necessarily lead your family versus if you were back in Azusa?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. So we lived in a very nice we lived in Glendora. I know you know Glendora, Eric. It's a really nice place. And it's very different from where we live now. Indonesia is a third world country, right? So we see poverty. It's in our faces every day. We wake up to the smell of burning trash every day. The sounds of just motorbikes zooming by our house every day. And the poverty is in your face here in a way that we never had to see when we lived in Glendora. Yeah. And so our kids, or our everyday experience of living here, is much different. But that's part of the reason why we wanted to move here. It's because we want our kids to not see a sanitized world, because the world is a really broken place. And this kind of forces them to work through and process what they're seeing and what they're experiencing.
Yeah. It feels like this is something that I'm growing into, and in every season of life, like leadership looks different, right? Like the way that you had to make that decision. You define leadership as having a vision for something that doesn't exist, seeing it, creating a plan for it, and then seeing it through, right?
Right. Yeah.
That full integration, right? I've been reading through John Maxwell's what's it called? It's called 21 Most Powerful Minutes in a Leader's Day. I've been reading that. It's almost like a little devotional. I read it 5 days a week. You get the weekends off because I guess you don't have to be a leader on the weekends. I'm just kidding, but you get the weekends off. So it's a Monday through Friday thing, and it's like a 5 to 8 minute read every day. And it's crazy because like I remember I had read through this a long time ago, maybe my last year of college, and it didn't make any sense to me. It didn't have really any meaning. It's like when you read a textbook in college and you're like, okay, cool. And then maybe like 10 years later, you are in a real life scenario. You're like, oh my goodness, like I read about that and now it matters. But I see you as a leader. I also met you as a leader, right? You were a leader as in, you were a college pastor. So it was a title, right? I call that positional leadership, right? It's like, so there's in the 5 phases of leadership, there's positional leadership, permissive, and there's production related, then people development. And then the last one is people follow you because of the person that you are.
Yeah.
As I get older, it's something that I've noticed more and more in terms of people, just the people in my life, or just people that are acquaintances, or even people that I follow from afar, whether through social media. Now you can be connected to anybody, right? Like I've had access to leaders that I probably would have never had in my lifetime because of the internet, right? Mm-hmm. Like just the fact that the 3 of us are speaking right now, and we're leaders in our respective circles of different things. that the three of us can just talk like this wouldn't have happened without the internet, right? And wouldn't have happened without my awesome technical difficulties on Zoom and all that stuff. But these are these things that allow us to do that. But when did you know, like, and I think there's different layers of leadership. Like maybe to your family, you're probably the highest level of leadership. There's obviously your kids listen to you because you're their dad, right? Of course, positionally, but you're also the leader of your family because of the person that you are to them. You are their father, and you actively take on that role. And so my question is, at what age did you recognize for the first time, or in different seasons, did you realize or know that you were a leader?
Oh man, it's probably, yeah. See, the thing is, I grew up like in Georgia, right? So in a time where there were not very many Asians living in Georgia.
I was going to say like that. I want to hear about that upbringing a little bit, because being Indonesian, fully Indonesian, both parents are Indonesian, right? Like,
yeah.
Living in not a very what do we call it? Melting pot of a place. Very, very, very white, right? Not very ethnic, right? I mean, very white or black, right? There's like kind of like there's two camps there, and of ethnicities, and you come in and you're kind of brown, like you're like brown, you look totally different than everybody else. Like what was that like? And and how did you develop leadership skills through that?
Yeah, I gotta say, it was kind of painful. Maybe other than everyone thought I knew like karate or whatever, I used to get asked all the time, karate. Goodness. But dude, I felt so out of place. I felt like nobody knew me. I felt like I didn't really have any friends. I'd get asked all the time, like, where are you from? How is your English so good? Just
wow.
And the county I grew up in, actually, when I was in elementary school, actually all the way through high school, it was still running integration programs. So kind of like the north part of our school district was like richer Caucasian. And then the southern part of the school district was poorer African-American. So to integrate the schools, they allowed African-American kids to pick any school in the school district they wanted to go to, and they would bus them to that school. And then to attract more Caucasian students to the southern areas, they would create magnet programs in those schools. So one school would have the science and math magnet program. The other one would be like the performing arts one. And so since I was neither, I could just, let's go anywhere. But I think what it did though, was like, I was keenly aware of like my otherness, that I didn't belong. And really like in middle school, high school, I kind of discovered my belonging in the church. And it was kind of like the first time I ever felt like I had real friends, that I was accepted for who I was, what I looked like, the funny things that I ate. And it was kind of the first place I found acceptance. But because of that experience, I think that I am aware of when people feel left out, or when people feel like they don't belong, or just people on the margins in general. Mm. So yeah, I forgot the original question.
I just like, what started, I mean, you started to think, mention a little bit about like knowing about people that are more marginalized, right? And people on the periphery, because you felt that you were very sensitive to that, right. Which I think is also a leadership skill. But my question was, what leadership skills do you feel that you obtained through growing up in Atlanta, and that you were able to, start developing in your life?
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, as a kid, I would say that I kind of defaulted to this mode of wanting to please everyone. So I would either be really, really nice or be really, really funny. And that was like kind of my way to get in with people. Or, you know what, since I was like, did really well in school, I'd let people cheat off me so that they'd like me.
You were that guy.
I was that guy. I let everybody cheat off me.
You were the Georgia plug.
Oh man.
The Hotlanta plug.
But you know, I really but kind of my heart though was very insecure and very shy. And it really took somebody calling me out and seeing leadership potential in me and inviting me to explore that leadership potential is when I first began to, think about myself as a leader or do kind of leadership things.
Yeah. That segues.
So,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
That segues perfectly into my next question, which was like, what were some of the leaders or the most influential leaders that you've had in your life? And like, through different stages, like what were some things you took away from them?
Yeah. I remember my, my youth pastor, Jason, he was just present for me in a way that I just was really missing mentorship especially during my teen years. You know, I mentioned my dad passing away when I was 17. So most of my middle school and high school years, he was just battling through health stuff. And so, I don't blame him. I don't have any kind of animosity towards that situation, but he just wasn't able to be my dad. And then my older brother is a few years older and was already away at college, but like Jason's just presence in my life, and pouring into it. He just gave me all the time in the world. He gave me the opportunity to work out my questions about the purpose of life. And so I had these big questions, right? Like, okay, like my parents, they weren't educated in Indonesia. They worked like in factories in America. My dad was a chef and a janitor, and it was like all about the American dream. And my question was like, okay, well, if my dad's like not even going to see the American dream fulfilled in me, then like, what is the purpose of life? And like Jason, my youth pastor, just let me ask those questions. And, even before I gave my life to Christ, he just like lived the love of Christ in his actions. So, we'd go shoot pool after school. He'd just pick me up. We'd go to the pool hall and shoot and just talk about life. But he just really served me that way. And then, being a teenager too, and being like a third culture kid, I had all these like cultural clashes with my mom. And he just was a really good go-between when my mom and I had trouble communicating. He just was able to see both sides and explain it to the both of us in a way that, not many people in my life have been able to help me build that bridge. So I would say he was a bridge builder, but more than anything, like he's just the ministry of presence, he was just there for me.
You guys still keep in touch?
We still do. Yeah. Yeah.
It's awesome. I read somewhere or heard somewhere that you're not a real leader until the leaders that you lead have created new leaders. It's pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you're a leader when the people that you lead are now leaders to others, is what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that what you see in the scriptures is this heart to multiply yourself by investing in other people and building new leaders. And Paul talks about it in 2 Timothy. He says to Timothy, like, take what I've given to you, give it to other people who will give it to other people.
Yeah.
And so just in that one verse in 2 Timothy 2:2, you see 4 generations of leadership.
Yeah.
And, like it's not lost upon me that as we're recording this, right, like the world is watching the leader of the United States and the president of Russia and just what's going on with Russia and Ukraine. And so, I think we kind of think of leaders as these huge figures in the world. But if you look at Jesus' model in scripture and how he spends his time, right? Of course, he has those times where he speaks in front of 5,000 people, right? When he feeds the 5,000, or, that's maybe even more than that. But if you look at how he spends his time in the Gospels, he actually spends the majority of it just with his 12 disciples. And with his 12 disciples, he spends even more time with just 3. Peter, James, and John are the ones that he's closest to. And so, my idea of changing the world really isn't like speaking in front of stadiums, although, people that do that, they're amazing and they can be influential too. But I also think that changing the world is just investing in 1 or 2 or 3 people's lives and kind of passing forward what you learn, what you get.
That's powerful, man. That's something I've really been praying about lately, even for myself, is in this next season, who am I supposed to be sowing into? I look back on the last, like I just had lunch yesterday at Ding Tai Fung with this guy that he's a pastor. Actually, John Lowe knows him. So he's the pastor at Bridge Church. His name is Dennis. Okay. And he used to be a member at my gym, maybe 2015, 2016.
Okay.
And awesome dude. And we're just connecting and we're just catching up. And I was like, man, like God has done so much in my life in these past, like I would say in the last year has been crazy. And I go back the last 2 years. Like I feel like in the last 2 years, more has happened than in the last 20. Right. But it's like, maybe part of it is I'm just more conscious of what he's been doing. But I was talking to him and, dude, why did I just even bring him up? I just like lost my train of thought. I was talking to him. We were grabbing lunch, and dude, what was the last thing that you just said?
Last thing that I just said is investing in a few people.
Oh, investing in people. So I look at him, and he's someone that even when he joined my gym, when he joined the gym, I was a boy. I was like a boy, dude. I was 7 years younger, right? So that I was barely in my mid-20s. And I didn't know, but he was investing in me by being around me and picking my brain in a certain way. And then I see that with like Mario has done that. You have done that for me in different ways. Like I ask you about like fatherhood questions, like all the time, right? Like, oh, as a dad, how do you deal with this? Or as a dad, like, how do you do this? And I was asking those questions even before I was a dad, right? And, same thing with Mario. And I think about the leaders that I've had over the last few years, like, it's not like these were people that were speaking on exactly. They weren't, it wasn't like Billy Graham said something. And then now because of that, my life is transformed forever. Like it really wasn't. They give great words. Like I follow Stephen Furtick on Instagram. Like that dude has like fire. He says some good stuff, but on the day to day, it's the people that you're conversating with. It's people that are spending time, asking you questions, the hard questions, and being able to call you out when you need to. And giving each other permission to do that in your lives, that's leadership,
Absolutely. And one of the things that I feel like we see in scripture is Jesus makes these like unlikely people into exemplars of leadership. In the scriptures. He's always pointing people out. And one of my favorites is in John 4, it's the woman at the well. Right. So you guys probably know the story, like, Jesus encounters this woman in the middle of the day. She's like drawing water by herself. And eventually, Jesus reveals to her that he's the Messiah. And so what we know about this woman is that she's had like 5 husbands or something like that. And the person that she's with now is not her husband. So she's kind of a woman that doesn't have a good reputation. But by the end of the story about the woman, it says that many Samaritans, so she was Samaritan, many Samaritans believed because of her testimony. And so, right, so she's not like an influencer in the positive sense. Like people don't, she's not respected.
She's notorious.
She's notorious, right?
Yeah.
But she's had this encounter with Jesus. And apparently all she does is like, she just tells her story, right? Come see a man who told me everything I ever did. That's all she did. And then because of her, like the whole town gets saved.
Yeah.
And so she becomes a leader for that town. Even though she doesn't have maybe what we would think of as the classical leadership characteristics.
Yeah.
She just has this experience and then she's willing to share about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead.
Speaking of experiences, you know, I think about leadership too sometimes. Sometimes leadership is not necessarily, or being a leader isn't not necessarily a title or like like you are a leader to someone, therefore that person is not a leader to you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like, because we often think to myself, like, you think to yourself like, oh, if this person is a leader, like, for example, your boss or something like that, that person is now your leader, and you think to yourself like, okay, I'm like in some ways subordinate or subservient to them in some way. And I was thinking about like just literally back to like when leadership happens. And I was thinking about a leadership moment yesterday where I texted Mario. So I'm doing this like 4-week dad course right now, family leadership course. And Mario, I sent him this text of like, I saw this thing, I copy and pasted it, I copied it, I like edited it because it really hit me really good. It was about like purity or like sexuality. And I was like, it's really good. And I edited it like mildly, like maybe 10% to make it more like what was hitting for me specifically. And then I pasted it to him. I go, yo, like, what do you think about this? Like, I want to use this. And then he basically in that very moment hits me back. And like, I had this pit in my stomach of like, dang, like I didn't do good work. Right. Because I pride myself on being excellent. Right. And sometimes leadership like can come out in the form of just accountability or in the form of like calling someone to like, I think there's this quote by, I think it was Jordan Rayner. He says, the idea is, the book is called Master of None. And he says, the idea of being described as a mediocre master of none should make us like sick to our stomachs as Christians. Why? Because mediocre work fails to accomplish the essence of the Christian life, right? Which is to serve others and glorify God, right? So mediocre work fails to accomplish the essence of which, like it's excellent. It's like it's excellence. It's just showing up and doing good work because we're supposed to. And then I was like thinking about what he was saying to me, and he was like, "This is good." Like he's like, "If you feel like this is good, like good enough, then like do it," basically. And I was like, "Dang, like no, like I'm not gonna go with good enough. I'm gonna go with what's best, right?" But if he hadn't said something, then I would have just been okay with good enough in that moment. And that in that moment, that was leadership. Even though we're kind of like peers in this thing that we're doing together, but he led me out of that, like out of that in that very moment. And I was like, dang, like that's leadership, even among peers or your friends, right?
Right. Yeah.
So thanks, Mario.
That's good stuff.
One thing that I was just like thinking about is like along the same lines, Eric, was that, you know, just because there's leadership qualities in people, right? And they're leaders in specific areas, doesn't mean that you can't swap leadership because of your strengths, right?
Yeah.
My strengths are not Eric's strengths all the time, and Eric's strengths are not my strengths all the time. There are some places that we meet and we are strong together, but there are different things like this where, you know, Eric's a great businessman. I'm terrible at business. You know, it's just like, that's just, I'm learning and I'm getting better, but there's things where we get to do exactly what I did yesterday in a small context in larger arenas of life. Right. And I can lean on Eric, or Eric can like catapult me into excellence. And I can do the same for him in different areas. And I think true leadership is really recognizing where you can support add value to each individual's life, in order for everyone to grow better together, right? And I think that's a huge theme of leadership that we don't really talk about too much, or I don't really heard too much. But I just wanted to like iterate that a little bit.
That's great.
All right. Well, we are coming down to this. I can't believe it's like we've already burned through this hour, but we want to
fast.
Well, yeah, I did. We want to pull out the shotgun questions here for you, okay. Roger.
All right.
Just core 5 questions that we ask
everybody. Can I ask one more question before we shotgun? I really want to hear this one, because I think this one is, I think one of the things about leadership is that people don't. Oh, you do? Okay, cool. So one thing that people don't realize when it comes to leadership is that leadership, it doesn't have to be, but it can be, and often more than not is terribly lonely, right? Leadership can feel really, really lonely and really, really isolating. Like you don't know what others, like you don't feel like others know what you're going through because you're doing this thing and you're leading the thing, right? And I felt that a ton through the last 10 years. And then leadership also requires us to do really, really hard things. So the question that I had was, what do you feel like, you could top 3 or top 1, whatever you want. What's the hardest thing you've ever had to do as leader?
The hardest, oh man. Okay. Probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do as a leader was let someone go. He was working for me, or he was working under me. And like in Christian ministry, I would say like sometimes we make decisions in ministry that where excellence and experience and some of the character things are overlooked because someone is charismatic or like really loud or really confident. And so me and this other guy, we just did not see eye to eye on things. And he was, we're okay now, by the way. So I want to make sure I honor this person in the way I talk about him. We're friends. We still talk. But in terms of like working together, it just did not work. And what was hard was like, I needed him to serve my vision. And at this point in his development, following me was really important. And he just couldn't do that. And I remember just coming to a certain point where I felt like, man, I don't think either of us are going to make it as leaders unless we end this thing between us. And so, I had to let him go. It was really hard because personally we were very good friends, but our working styles, it just didn't mesh. And so I had to put aside that I would hurt his feelings or maybe it would hurt our friendship, but I felt like it was for the vision of what I was going for. Yeah. I couldn't compromise on what I felt like God was calling me to do. And for whatever reason, his being on my team was holding me back from that.
Huge. Just being able to lead in a hard situation like that, where you're thinking about, I was talking to somebody about this the other day, yesterday, you're thinking about relationship, long-term relationship. You're thinking about friendship. You're thinking about all these other not specific to the situation things that will be rippled effect, right? Because of this one situation, and able to like persevere through that for the best of everyone, right? Yeah. So my final question before our shotgun questions is, what is it you look for in someone as a leader?
Mm. That's good. I'll throw out a few kind of examples. I really like persistence and grit. There's the story of the persistent widow in Luke 18. She just keeps going to this judge until she gets what she wants. And then, it says that Jesus tells his disciples the story about her to show them that they should always pray and never give up. And to me, okay, everybody's human, right? So every leader will make a mistake. Every leader at some point will change course or realizing that their strategy is incorrect and learn from it. But it's kind of like that persistence and not giving up. That's one of the key things I look for. But I also want to see really conviction and faith, and then acting on it too. So that kind of goes with the persistent grit. But kind of like another quick story is the four friends that bring the paralyzed man to meet Jesus because they know he can heal their friend. And so they look for a way in. They can't find a way in. So they get creative, right? They literally tear off the roof and lower their friend down and think outside the box. But they're just so convicted that this guy has to meet Jesus, and we're going to do everything we can to make it happen for him to meet Jesus. And I think the cool part of that story too is it says that Jesus saw their faith and then he heals the man. Right. So whatever it is about that situation, it wasn't just about the paralyzed man, but he sees their faith collectively. So that conviction and faith, and then acting on it. And then I think the last is just someone who gives of themselves extravagantly, whether that's of their time or of their resources. Someone means something, or someone's convicted to do something, or they really believe in something if they make a personal sacrifice for it. Right. And so
absolutely.
There's that story of the woman who kind of breaks the jar of oil over Jesus' feet. And the disciples, or they think that she's wasted all this money that could have gone to the poor. But Jesus says, because of what she's done, whenever this story is told, people are going to remember her, right? So, and that ends up being true. And so she's just this exemplar of someone who gives extravagantly of herself.
Yeah. I really, really like that last one, because I think about this a lot. And if you're not able to give your time, resources, energy, emotions, even space in your mind, which is a huge one, I think that we all forget, is if you're not able to give those things, then do you even really have skin in the game for whatever it is that you care about, right? It really comes down to, because our values and what we care about are always reflected in pretty much two things: what we do with our time, our calendar, right? And the second is what we do with our wallet or our finances, right? And I think, and all the other emotions, the mind, the way that we think, it operates upon how we take. Those are the two actionable things that you can kind of look at, right? It's how you spend your time, how you spending your money. Those are the verbs, right? But it talks about, it really shows you where your heart is.
Yeah. Love that. All right. Well, let's jump into our the shotgun questions. We got to come up with a better name for that, but something like top 5. I don't know, something. All right. So I'll start. And all right, Phil, Roger, you are in, Phil.
I do know Phil. Phil's my buddy.
Yeah. So you are in Indonesia. You're in a completely different place. You probably had a regimen of taking care of yourself back in California or in Atlanta. How do you take care of your physical self? What's your physical practice right now? Taking care of your body.
Yeah. So actually, Eric still coaches me.
Virtually. All right.
So he
Let's
programs
go.
for me
Plug.
every day.
Shameless plug.
And speaking of leaders who follow, I've had to let Eric lead me in this area because I don't know about nutrition and exercise. And so one of the ways that he's been, Eric is quick to hold his friends accountable, right? He has told me like, you were very consistent at being inconsistent.
He loves it.
And so right now, one of our accountability pieces is I send him a picture of every meal that I eat.
Wow.
So that he can help me figure out and learn what nutrition is and how to take care of myself. But yeah, I'm fine. I'm working through knee injuries and back injuries right now. And so Eric's programming things that are helping me rehabilitate. But I'm still very much into CrossFit. I'm like really excited for 22.1. I think it's dropping today, right?
It's right now, like as we're talking right now.
Right now. So I can't wait to see what it is. But yeah, I still work out, and I really miss the CrossFit Reason community. But I'm glad that I still get to stay connected in a way through Eric. I'm even wearing your shirt.
Here we go.
Dang, look at that.
Here we go.
Do you remember what the back of this shirt says?
Fittest in Bandung, bro. Show the fans, dude. Fittest in Bandung, man. Oh man,
love it. That's hilarious. All right, Eric.
Second question is, how do you take care of your heart?
Oh man, I wake up every morning and I worship and pray and spend time with God. And all the things that I'm having a hard time with, I surrender to Him. I know that's one of the values for you guys, right?
Yep.
I surrender to God and say, God, I need help in this area. I need you to keep my heart soft because so much of what I see here can harden me. And yeah, I try to do what I can I have weekly dates with my wife. We have daily dates in a way where we process. Awesome. I spend time with my kids every day. So,
just on a practical note, you said you start your morning with worship and prayer. How long is that?
30 minutes. And then the community that I'm with, we pray together every day at 6:30.
Got it.
So, yeah.
Cool. Next one's a good Mario question.
How do you take care of your mind?
How do I take care of my mind? I try to read as much as I can. So I'm always reading a book, and it doesn't have to be Christian or nonfiction. But I'm also, I think of myself as a lifelong learner. So even as we speak, since I'm a social entrepreneur, I always feel like I need to learn more and grow. I'm actually in the midst of applying for an MBA right now. So I always feel like taking care of your mind is to grow and to learn and to receive input.
Huge. I love that.
Awesome.
What are you going to get your MBA in?
Probably social entrepreneurship.
Okay. Cool.
So,
right on.
Yeah.
Second to last is, how do you take care of your soul or your spirit?
So there's kind of like the daily things, the weekly things, the monthly things, and then the yearly things. And so the daily thing is spending time with God. Kind of the monthly or quarterly thing is I go on a retreat by myself every month. Oh no, sorry, every quarter. And just kind of reflect every quarter, just for one night. But I journal and I process and I kind of go through the big rocks that have happened over the last 3 months or so. And then every year I try to take a big vacation with the family as a way of just resting my mind, body, and soul and kind of resetting and things like that.
That's actually something that Diane and I plant. We have like our family values. And we said that one of the things that we need to do on an annual basis is, and because like I could probably go without. I don't say I could go without. I've actually grown my soul to enjoy vacations more. But I've been such a I'm such a workaholic. Even on vacation, I work, right? So for me, a true vacation where like I don't touch anything, think about anything, and just stay like completely present has only been done one time. Like I think in my entire life. And so when you go on this vacation, just from a very practical sense, how long is it? Is my question. How far away do you go? And is there any rules around that?
The rules around that really are maybe a week long max.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to be far. I mean, it could be like I live in Bandung. Bali is like an hour and a half flight away. So it doesn't have to be super far for us. Mm-hmm. But kind of the rules are like I kind of detach from electronics and noise, being maybe the news or checking my emails or kind of being on my phone all the time. Mm-hmm. And I really just be present with my family and with myself and spend kind of even more time reflecting and being with God.
Yeah.
The first few things give Eric hives. Detaching.
I'm getting better.
All right. Here's our final one. How do you care for or take care of your wallet or your finances?
Oh man, that's good. Well, my wife is an accountant by trade.
There you go.
So they spreadsheet every cent they spend.
So we've got spreadsheets for all our bills. But early on in our marriage, we actually took a financial course together, and really what we got out of it was living simply and living by within our means. And we've found that the more we do that, the better we're set up for the future. So yeah, we put away a certain amount, we give away a certain amount, and anything that's left over, it's allows us to be generous with it.
All right, man. Well, thank you, Roger, for joining us, man. This is a great episode. Just love your heart and love what you guys are doing out there. Just creating jobs for locals and trying to improve the industry around you and change lives. So good.
Thanks.
Eric, you wanna take us out?
Yeah. Thank you guys for listening. And today we had our awesome episode on leadership. I think our next guest we are talking about, what's the next one, Mar? Do you remember?
Man,
I can't remember.
You're testing me. Hold on.
I know it's Paul. And Paul's a serial entrepreneur.
Talking about
imposter syndrome. No.
Imposter syndrome.
Being a dad. Oh yeah. I think it's about being a father.
There you go.
Yeah, it's about being a father. He's got two kids that are not his,
right?
Yeah, it's not two kids that are not his paternal kids.
Right.
Which is
right.
Yeah, and, but he shows up for them as if they are his, but he shows up as if he was their paternal father, and fathers are better than a lot of organic fathers I've seen. So awesome. Oh yeah, guys, thank you guys for listening. It's been an awesome journey. I deeply, deeply enjoy each of these conversations. I hope you guys equally and deeply enjoy listening and tuning in, and I hope that it blesses you. I hope that it fills your soul. These conversations give me life. I look forward to this conversation every week, and I wish I could have them every day. But I so look forward to these, and they're just completely soul-filling, especially just being able to connect with different people doing different things and just building for the kingdom. And I never thought that 10 years ago we'd be doing anything like this. So this is so cool to be able to do. Thank you for journeying with us. If you'd like to connect with us, we are Instagram. Our Instagram handle is @WeTheTrust. We also have a newsletter if you'd like. I think it's going to be attached to the episode on Spotify and Apple. And we recently, I think are we announcing that today, Mario?
Okay.
And we recently just started a Patreon. So if you'd like to support us on Patreon, this is a nonprofit venture. We don't make any money doing any of this. But it would help us to cover some of the costs. And we take a lot of time away from our busy schedules to do this because we believe this is something that we've been called to do and be purposeful in this next decade. So let's thank you guys for listening. Thank you so much. Let's continue to run.
If you want to connect with Roger, we'll put some links there too that you can connect with him. All right, guys.
Awesome.
See ya. Thanks for joining us today, guys. For more content, you can find us on Instagram at WeTheTrust or at WeTheTrust.com. If you'd like to connect further with Eric, you can find him on Instagram at Coach Eric Freedom. And if you'd like to connect further with me, Mario, you can find me on Instagram at the Mario Quesada. We'll see you next time.